Well, let's get more now on that. And joining me is former Conservative Party chairman and Rishi Sunak supporter, Oliver Dowden. Good afternoon to you. Families watching us today are facing up to £1,600 a year loss, a quarter of their income going towards energy bills potentially. And here we have two potential leaders not able to agree on how to deal with the financial crisis.
Well, I think good afternoon. I think you're absolutely right to highlight the scale of the challenge being faced. And this is my concern. If this is purely done by bringing forward these national insurance tax cuts, for somebody who's working, for example, full-time on the national living wage, that will benefit them by less than £60, whereas whoever's the new Prime Minister, it will benefit that person by up to £1,800. So these measures are not fit to deal with the scale of the challenge that we are facing.
So clearly you're saying that Liz Truss's measures are not suitable and your favoured candidate, Rishi Sunak's, are. But the point I'm trying to make is people watching this are likely to be, and many people I'm speaking to are pretty bemused because there's such a different approach. And we've got a Prime Minister and a Chancellor of Exchequer who are away on holiday. Is anything being done behind the scenes to try and help people right now?
Well, yes, and you may remember that when Rishi Sunak was Chancellor of the Exchequer alongside Prime Minister Boris Johnson, they announced a wide range of measures to support people, and in particular, the most vulnerable people will get up to £1,200. And it really is that kind of direct support that is required to help people at this very difficult time. And merely promising to bring forward a national insurance cut will not be sufficient in the scale. If you think about somebody on that lowest income, working full-time on the national living wage, £60 isn't enough. It requires those kind of big, bold interventions, which you saw from Rishi Sunak, both during the COVID crisis and in response to this.
Bailout?
Well, I think you've seen already a very bold response from when Rishi Sunak was Chancellor of the Exchequer. He committed to £1,200 to the most vulnerable, and he's been clear that he'll be willing to take further action as required. And by the way, that also does include tax cuts. That's why he's committed to removing VAT on domestic fuel. But it's quite clear when one looks at the scale of what people are facing that bigger and bolder action will be required.
Do you think Rishi Sunak is able to actually catch up with Liz Truss now?
Yes, I do. And I think what we saw from the warnings from the Bank of England at the end of last week was the scale of the challenge facing any incoming Prime Minister. And I think set against that challenge, you want someone with the drive and the experience to deal with this kind of economic crisis. That's exactly what Rishi Sunak showed when he dealt with the COVID crisis. You remember we were facing a situation where millions, if not tens of millions of people could have lost their jobs at the height of COVID because of lockdown measures. He brought in that job retention scheme, the furlough scheme, saving millions of jobs. It's that kind of bold action that is required and the experience. And that's why I'm backing Rishi Sunak, because I believe he brings both of those things to the table.
The Times is referring to the Great British Pledge Off. I mean, both candidates have made, extraordinary number of pledges. Are they actually going to hold to that? Because those seem to be pledges that are playing to their current very small audience rather than the wider electorate.
Well, actually, I would argue, and I think you've seen, that Rishi Sunak has taken some flack for not promising large tax cuts funded by borrowing, because he recognises, and indeed I recognise, that the biggest problem we face right now as a nation is inflation. And we have to come down on that scourge of inflation. And it was interesting to me that Nigel Lawson, that most successful of chancellors under Margaret Thatcher, endorsed Rishi Sunak's proposals precisely because he's willing to take the difficult decisions to control inflation. Because if we don't control inflation, it makes everyone poorer. And when inflation is running at 13%, in a few short years, people can see their savings, their pensions income, their income from work halved. It is a really pernicious thing, that level of inflation. We have to take the tough action now to deal with it, but also to help people in the short term through this difficult period, which is why you saw the sort of measures that Rishi has already announced.
Quite, but Gordon Brown calling it a financial time bomb is no small thing, is it? And finally, you know, given that we've got these two candidates with such differing views and a level of backing from both, from across the party and the members, what happens when one of them becomes leader? Is the government going to be singing from the same hymn sheet, or are we going to see more disarray and chaos?
No, I think both sides will come together in the national interest. And I think actually Gordon Brown's comments rather illustrate this. We all remember what Gordon Brown did when faced with a situation like this. The paltry 75p increase in the state pension. It's exactly that sort of thing that will come together to resist. And I'm confident that we have two good candidates to lead our country. But I'm also clear that Rishi Sunak's proposals are up to the scale of the challenge that we face, and we have to get real as a nation about the scale of the challenges we face and the leadership that's required through it.
We're going to have to leave it there. Oliver Dowden, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.